Welcome to Unmasking Social, where we talk about building real friendships and meaningful connections without masking who we truly are. I'm your host, Sharon Baum, a speech and language pathologist with an expertise in social thinking and how it relates to autism and ADHD, specifically with our teens and tweens. Let's dive in. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be misunderstood for most of your life because everybody around you and yourself don't know that you're experiencing something that's causing you to socialize in ways that are different? On today's episode, we have someone who spent much of his life not knowing that he was neurodivergent, which impacted him in such great ways, causing him to eventually have a nervous breakdown. Today, he comes on the podcast as a major advocate in today's neurodivergent society and tells us just a little bit more. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unmasking Social. Today, I am honored to have Nathan Chung, a 5-time award winner, recognized as a top 50 global neurodiversity evangelist and a D30 disability impact honoree. He serves as a board member for Ignite Worldwide, a nationally recognized multi-award winning nonprofit dedicated to achieving gender equity and STEM through education programs. He believes that neurodiversity and accessibility are the keys to having more women in tech. Also, he's on a mission to make workplaces more accessible and inclusive. So, Nathan, thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you on Masking Social.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, Sharon.
So I'm very curious because you've been very open about your autism diagnosis, your late autism diagnosis. And I've seen that a lot, even just as an SLP, working with teens and tweens who don't even know until they're 15 or 16 that they have autism. Can you just share a little bit about that journey in terms of coming to that realization that, wait, I think I have autism. How did that go for you?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Well, for starters, I'm much older than that. Let's see.
Right.
You could think of it as like investigating a crime. Like I always knew from a very early age I was different. Things like hard time making friends. I preferred to be by myself. I didn't listen to teachers in school. So that alone was hard. Add to that, being Asian, I also caught a lot of cultural and racial stigmas because in Asian culture, there's this huge push to make the family look good. You need to actually pretend as if everything's normal. You got to push for success. So that's a lot of pressure. And you really can't talk about mental health or much less neurodiversity in Asian cultures. That's slowly turning around, but thousands upon thousands of years, Asian culture says, don't say anything, hide it, pretend, and just act like a normal person. So I have a lot of that going on. I think the big turning point in my life was when I was working one day, I just had a complete total nervous breakdown because a lot of the work pressures, being bullied at work. And then when I heard the complaints from my boss and others around me, it was just typical things like not paying attention, not maintaining eye contact, and just sometimes not listening to directions. It's literally similar to investigating crime. Like you have all these clues. So I started investigating, like, what is going on with me? Like, why am I like this? So eventually I was able to break free my cultural and the family stigmas, and I started like going on YouTube, started listening to other people with shared experiences from their lives, started reading books, watching videos, reading research studies, and it's like a picture started emerging where it was very clear that I was different. I had autism, ADHD, and more. And then after that, of course, I started trying to find a mental health professional who could diagnose me. Like, unfortunately, as common as everyone knows, conditions like autism, the stereotype is it affects mostly white cis males and it predominantly the research focused on children. So like I was living in California. I struggled, like, where can I find a medical professional who can diagnose me as an adult? And I just got told no, left and right. Sorry, we can't help you. Eventually, when I moved to Colorado, thank goodness I finally found some people who were willing to help test and diagnose me as an adult. So late in my life, I finally got diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and it was liberating. It's like things made sense, and it was very fulfilling for me. It's like I was finally able to live my true self.
Wow, Nathan, I mean, that really like touched my heart, and whoever's listening, I'm sure it's going to touch theirs. First of all, that journey sounds really, really tough. It sounds like you were misunderstood for much of your life, and you were trying to understand yourself. The cultural differences, even just as an SLP myself, I see where individuals are not being diagnosed because people are thinking that, oh, it's just their culture. But no, things go beyond culture. But I do have a human shared experience with you because I know what it's like in terms of having that Eastern European background, the Jewish Eastern European background. You know, I was raised first generation American, and just, you know, at least many years ago growing up, it was just mental health and anything related, just kind of shove it under the rug and, you know, just we'll deal with it later. You know, things have improved, but in our communities, I feel like there's still a long way to go. But with that being said, I'm so glad that you were able to finally feel free. And I've heard that a lot. It's that unmasking, you know, that's why, you know, we call it unmasking social, that unmasking, you took off that mask and you were finally free and it felt amazing. And so where did you go from there? Because you were in the tech industry already at that time. And I believe, I don't remember the year exactly. Was it 2017?
Yeah, something like that. So it's just funny, like one of the first things I did was start researching what are the best jobs for a neurodivergent person like me with autism and ADHD, and of course said technology. So that was kind of funny because I already
Very common.
Because I already work in technology and cybersecurity.
Yeah, many of my teens and tweens go on to that, by the way. So you're in company.
But one thing I did learn from many of my colleagues in the neurodivergent community is to be cautious, because yes, even though people like me who are autistic or ADHD, even though we're really good at tech, it is not the only path. Assuming that is a stereotype, because there are many other career paths, like being a photographer or being a musician. It's just so infinite.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I find that a lot of individuals that I've worked with myself also go into the engineering or tech sphere and ignore other things. And I guess it's easy to fall into that trap. So are there other interests that you have beyond that you feel like maybe have fallen behind that you wish that you would take up more?
To be honest, I'm still a work in progress, because now that I'm diagnosed late in life, I'm essentially like on a mission of self-discovery to try to find out who I am all over again. So it'll take a while, but it feels good to be free of the chains and to be myself.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. And I feel like it's almost like you have like a rebirth in some sense of being born again, which is just so great because now the world's basically your oyster in a sense. And I think that a lot of individuals don't feel like that. So now that you are in the tech and AI sphere and you see that a lot of individuals with autism and ADHD are going into that sphere, do you think that the neurodivergent population also has a unique way of connecting with AI and tech, that they bring a special lens to AI and tech that maybe others don't? Or is it just that maybe they just fall into it, or both?
I think high level, a lot of people like me, like we're just good. A lot of us are just good at technology. We have strong like ability to hyper focus, finding a needle in the haystack, all the common stereotypes. But sometimes this feels like people like me, we're just naturally drawn to technology. It's things like this wanting to discover and play with the new fancy toys, or that curiosity, that wanting to find out like, what can I do to make things better? That comes naturally to me and many others.
You know, it's so interesting because, yeah, I've seen that also. I got with a lot of the individuals that I've worked with and currently do, that that those fixed interests that they say are fixed, right, are actually passions and curiosity. And sometimes knowing every little detail can be really fatiguing, but at the same time can be really helpful in a lot of ways. And it's so fascinating to me because you're so knowledgeable and so well known in your area and even beyond, because even I found you. And you're also an advocate. And so it's so fascinating because you get this diagnosis later on in life, and then you become an advocate. And not only do you become an advocate, but you start speaking up for people in the corporate world. You think that you're advocating for people where you feel like it's unfair that they're not given the right inclusive supports. And how does that happen so quickly?
So high level, I wanted to give back to the community because when I look back at my life, I never really got help growing up. At first, that made me angry, but when I look back and look at others like me who are younger, things are better now with diagnosing and everything, but a lot of young folks, they also don't get help. That's why I felt the need to start speaking, writing articles, and sharing my story, because you'd be surprised, some people literally cry. I did one talk at a conference. Some people in the crowd would literally cry when they hear my story because they've been trained for so long to just bottle it up, just mask, pretend everything's normal, and just not be your true self. And they see someone like me on the stage talking about these things openly. It's like eye-opening. Some literally start breaking down crying hearing my stories.
I mean, I can imagine that there is a well of tears that are drowning, because when you first opened up to me in the beginning, I felt it in my heart. So it's so interesting how there are so many others in your situation that are also struggling, and you are giving back. And in these tech and advocacy spaces that you're in right now, how do you navigate that, building these authentic relationships with these people that are in the industry so that they can feel like, oh, we really need to try out more inclusive practices so that people don't end up going through what you went through?
Yep. To be honest, because of my autism, I struggle with relationships. But one thing I learned is the importance to find your tribe. Like, for example, I found it much easier to network and interact with others who also want to make things better. Because, quite frankly, one area that doesn't get enough attention is the impact of autism, ADHD, and neurodiversity upon women. Like a lot of the women I talk to, like even some friends in Europe, like they don't get diagnosed till late in life, or they get misdiagnosed. They go through depression. It's an awful tragedy that so many women are misdiagnosed and dismissed at this day and age with all this technology and all this medical knowledge. When they go to the doctor's office, they're still dismissed. They say, doctor would tell them, you don't have autism. These are like hormonal, these are menopause, or anything other than autism. All because, again, the stereotype of person with autism, ADHD, or was neurodivergent is a cis white male. So if you don't fall in that bucket, you get dismissed. Sad.
Yeah, and as a woman, I feel that strongly in terms of a lot of areas in life where we get dismissed in the medical field. Personally, and a lot of the girls struggled that I've worked with because some of them, either they were trying to blend in and really conform as much as possible so that they could find their tribe easily. And girls, when they're teens and tweens, can be challenging. I mean, boys can be challenging too, but in a different way. But I felt like, again, there was just a lot more masking going on. And you, though, Nathan, you have really advocated for women, specifically, not just everybody who's neurodiverse, but you have a special place in your heart for women. And so where did that come from, that special place of advocating for women in the workplace?
Part of it is, I think, came from just the need to help out, because women, there's a lot of women who want to work in the tech and STEM fields, but a lot of them don't get the opportunity. I think part of the solution is it's called taking care, identifying and addressing their neurodivergent need, because a lot of women who want to get into tech, they're neurodivergent and they're similar to me. So I just felt the need to help out. The other part of it is, again, it's like the stereotypes. For a lot of girls that go to school, they want to go into tech, but they get told by teachers or their parents, no, women don't do this stuff. They just follow the, what do you call it, the script, traditional stereotypes. Like a woman in India would probably get told their main focus in life is get married, get a husband, get married, have kids. That's it. The traditional stereotype. But they forget is a lot of extraordinary women are out there who not only can get in the field, there are many out there who are excelling in tech and cybersecurity and STEM fields, and they're all over the world.
That's so amazing, just how much empathy you have for all these people, how much space you can hold for not just your own experience, which I'd be understating it by calling it traumatic, because it's above that. It was awfully traumatic. And yet you still have the space to hold, to empathize, and actually put into action things to support, like you said, these girls who aren't even given the option, and they could be fantastic. You've seen it in action, it seems like, these fantastic women who are tech leaders. But it seems like something is going on in the industry. So from your perspective, what do you think needs to change in the AI tech industry, which is just growing exponentially, in the way that they recruit and train people? Because it seems like they're recruiting and they're training people, and then they're missing out on really great people because they may not be educated as much as you are, Nathan.
Yep. That's going to be a hard question because, as everyone knows, like AI is not perfect, and it is essentially be trained based on humanity, and the current environment we live in today is very sexist, very racist, very much against women. So, of course, the AI will have that bias as well when it's used to evaluate candidates, which is unfortunate. Some things which I've seen happen, which some other people do, which helps, is sometimes when they recruit, they try to, remove identifying marks from resume. Things like, if you remove the name and you look at only the skills and accomplishments, you have better outcomes.
Oh, I love that.
Things like that. And number two is make the interview not about what you did in the past. Like, have it more situational to show what you can do. Like, for example, if X happens, what would you do? Make it more situational and allow the candidate to demonstrate their skills. And then most importantly of all, give the candidate flexibility in the interviews, because all too often it's like a social dance. It's like going to a dance with another person where you got to follow cues, conversations, things like, you tell me about yourself. Even I struggle with that. Instead, it is better to throw that out the door and focus on the candidate's strengths and allow them to show you what they can do.
It's so interesting. So it sounds like to me, you're bringing up really important points, and this actually ties into some of the strategies that we as professionals use. One of the things is, you mentioned these open-ended questions, right? These open-ended questions, which really can trick people up who are autistic, right? And you said even for yourself, that's something that trips you up, open-ended questions. It's better to lean into, even when you're interviewing, asking questions that are a little bit more direct, so that individuals have the opportunity to showcase their strengths and not get all bogged down by what the question is. So that's where we go with the neuro-affirming approach, which is we're supporting and we're affirming what the individual can do, and we're ascertaining that through, it sounds like, modifying how we even interview people. That's actually a very interesting thing that I never even heard about, because we only hear about the other end of training individuals to interview in a way that's going to accommodate the interviewer. But you're saying that the interviewer should modify in order to get a better picture of who this neurodiverse population is. So, for example, you mentioned open-ended questions being just way too much, which is so common, right? Are there any other specifics that you can think of that interviewers can pay mind to so that they could not miss a wonderful candidate?
I think the other piece to it is a lot of people, they need to get rid of their own biases and assumptions. Like, for example, one really good one is, I was watching this show a few months ago, what's the name? Yellowstone, I think 1912, 1913 from that era. And the the mother, the family's patriarch's mother, she was interviewing someone for a job, and she told him, no, you're not ready for this job because you're not making eye contact, so you don't look serious. So these outdated perceptions of what makes a good candidate, those need to be tossed out the door. Because for me, I would have a hard time maintaining eye contact.
Eye contact. You got me at eye contact. That is something, again, so outdated and so not part of what we want our individuals to be doing who are neurodiverse. And that's something that every time I see a goal that says, okay, X will maintain eye contact. No, we're not forcing anybody to use eye contact. And I don't think people still understand why that is so difficult, why things like maintaining eye contact is difficult. Can you maybe explain why that is so hard for so many and why this should not be held against people?
It's hard because I think when we grow up, everyone just follows the social norms of if you're maintaining eye contact, you're paying attention. And so if you're not interested.
Yeah.
It's a very, very ancient line of thinking. But a lot of people like me are extraordinary. And brings me to another point. I think the workforce today, it is under threat because during COVID-19, a lot of jobs went remote and a lot of people like me thrived. We very much thrived working remote. But now you look at the news and the industry, it's like left and right, companies are saying, come back to the office. And if you can't, well, we got to let you go. And that is destroying many of the gains made. And a lot of people I know a lot of neurodivergent individuals who are just struggling now to find work. It's sad.
So I'm curious because I've heard both sides of this argument, right? Where let an individual work remotely because this is where they thrive. This is where they can do their best work. This is where they can focus more. This is where they're not overstimulated, especially when you have ADHD and autism mixed together. A remote workplace can be really, really wonderful. And then the flip side of the argument is I'll hear people saying, oh, well, we can't keep people in a place where they're not going to grow and develop. They have to get out of the COVID-19 bubble and be exposed again to a area where they can, work on their social communication rather than kind of feel safe. So it's interesting that there are two sides of the coin. What's your perspective on all of that, on the two sides of the argument?
So high level, I think the key is flexibility because we're all different. Like, for example, despite being neurodivergent myself, another person in the next room or in a similar job at a similar company, they might be totally fine working in the office. So I think part of the key is just asking the individual what their preferred work arrangement. For example, like women in particular, so there's so many women out there who have multiple responsibilities outside of work. They have to take care of kids, they have to go out and pick up their kids from school, or they might even have to take care of elderly parents. For many people, women particularly, they need the flexibility. In terms of organizations, I've seen it both ways too. I've seen a lot of execs say working remote is bad because in the office you can better collaborate, you can better socialize, and that is true to some extent. But the best of all is the flexibility, because you do lose some talent when you demand everyone to come back to the office. But yeah, essentially the key is flexibility, in my opinion.
I love what you just said. Do you mind if I plagiarize it for a moment?
Sure, go ahead.
You said that you would lose that demand. Was that what you said? Lose that demand, right?
People with a lot of organizations would lose great, amazing talent all because of strict RTO mandates. Like, come back to the office or else.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. Lose the demand, right? So the workspace and the school space and whatever space we're in, we're losing talent because we're being inflexible, right?
Yes.
And by we, not I and you, obviously. But here we are, as a professional amongst many other professionals, promoting flexibility. It's all about cognitive flexibility. We want everybody to see the shades of gray. The black and white thinking is what holds people back. And this is part of, the whole neurodiverse social thinking movement. But now we got to put it into practice, it seems like, as people who are on the other side of it. You mentioned flexibility. Flexibility means that, okay, it doesn't have to be one way or the other, but let's get into that shade of gray and let's allow people to have some balance. The key is balance with flexibility. It sounds like you said women who maybe need to come run home, or even a father who is taking care of, a single dad, or in some cases a neurodiverse individual who can still work on their social communication and still develop their social skills in many areas, but still just be split between the office and not being in the office. But like you said, it sounds like there is a big push for come back to the office or nothing.
Yep.
That actually is very concerning to me. So with that push since COVID-19, it sounds like you've seen it escalate, that pushback, right? It doesn't matter if you're neurodiverse or not, that push is still there.
Yes.
Right?
The other piece to it is a lot of companies are doing this also because it's a nice, convenient way to lay off a lot of people because they know people will refuse to do it. So bye-bye.
Oh, okay. And then that's it.
Yep, that's it. And when you look at the news, some of the big companies are also getting in trouble because one thing I say in social media is these RTO mandate is bad, it's horrible. But you'd be surprised, some people are of the opinion as some respond to me saying, what's the big deal? If you are a person with disability, you need to work remotely, just file an accommodation request and no problem. But the key is for many organizations, in order to even get that request in and get that granted, you need to essentially out yourself and wear the label that you have a disability. A lot of people are not safe to do. They don't want to do that because they don't feel safe.
Yeah. I know many people that don't feel safe outing themselves as having a disability because even though it says they can't hold it against you, you still feel that they may do so. You can't prove or disprove that. But what's interesting about your field specifically, and maybe it's my own bias, so please check me if it's my own implicit bias, but I also find that a lot of the teens and tweens that I worked with go on to this field because it's also a less social field. It's not a field where you need to constantly be interacting with people. It really depends on your role, of course, but you can actually work remotely full-time and get the job done really well in tech, which is why even before COVID, I know people in tech that were working remotely. So I'm baffled by the idea that you wouldn't be able to work from home in an industry where you can get the job done in tech remotely. But also, is my bias correct that a lot of these individuals are going into tech to kind of keep themselves away from the social space from what you've observed? Obviously, it's your observation.
Well, just like neurodiversity itself, it's a mixed bag. Because, for example, I know some neurodivergent individuals, they're not shy. They love the social scene. They could sell you a product, or they're great in marketing, and from the service they look normal. So it's all mixed bag. So overall, I would not say people work in tech to avoid social contact because people can do a really good job being very social.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because that's where extrovert and introverted comes in. And I think that's also a piece that's missing because, like you said, there are these extroverted individuals that are autistic that may have ADHD as well. And they bring a lot in terms of the social, even in the tech industry where you said it could be sales, it could be management, where you're always talking to people. So it sounds like you found your happy place, Nathan, in terms of work, right? And so you now work in AI, which is a very, very interesting industry. And you are just on the cutting edge of amazing innovations. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're actually doing for us, people who aren't as good as tech?
So high level, I work in cybersecurity more specifically. So with all the AI we see in the news left and right. So my job is essentially to sit in a meeting and try to evaluate the security risks of AI. So you can think of AI as a double-edged sword. So for the disability community, we are literally entering a golden age where the AI is providing lots and lots of new tools and accessibility, technology, devices, and systems. So that's wonderful. The downside is, from a cybersecurity point of view, security is, are those systems secure? What about our privacy? Nobody really thinks about that.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So that's kind of a concern for the future about the security of it all. And I'm sure that's something that you work really hard on. And so that's interesting. It sounds like interesting to me, but again, I have stayed very far away from the tech field, so I don't know as much. But you, when you speak about it, your face lights up. It seems like you really like what you're doing just by your facial expressions. And I'm not studying your facial expressions, but it is sending a message to me that this does excite you. But is there anything that concerns you in terms of neurodiversity advocacy in this AI era? Because I think about AI is just changing the way we communicate in general. And so I don't know what that impacts can look like for the neurodiversity advocacy movement.
Yep. So the AI is helping tremendously for accessibility. The downside is it's like a technological shift. It's like when the computer first came out back in the day. So there are opportunities being made, and a lot of individuals can jump in the field and they can benefit. In fact, I know many neurodivergent individuals who are just killing in AI right now. The downside is with any technological shift, many of us risk being left behind. It's like we got to jump on the bandwagon now. By the way, another group I'm part of is called GCRAI, just the General Global Council for Responsible AI. That was a group created by my friend Carmen Marsh. So the group is trying to get people together to network and try to essentially get us to use AI responsibly.
Responsibly, like in terms of making sure that people don't use it in a way where they're not learning anymore. I worry sometimes about the next generation using it as a way to do all their schoolwork, or I'm sure on a more serious level with work, it could take away from actual work, right? And work competency. Also very fascinating to me is also just about how you didn't just stop at joining these forums and advocating and pushing while you're working really long hours and, finding yourself along the way and still finding yourself and going through all of this. Like, you really are a story of rebirth, of rebuilding. So inspiring to anybody who's listening, any teen or tween out there that is struggling right now. Nathan Chung is here. He is a testament to how you can move forward. And not only that, but inspire and not just sit there and leave people behind. You take people with you. You make sure that they're coming along for the ride. And with that, you've started a couple of podcasts and a most recent podcast that you're probably proud of. And can you tell us a little bit about the podcasts and what you hope people can gain from them?
Sure. So going back to my first podcast is called Neurosick. So I started that during COVID because I figured I'm stuck at home, and I saw the podcast as my way of reaching out to the world so I can interact with people and to get to know them better. And that was very successful. For a time, it was even like one of the top 5 podcasts, even in Japan, like just shot for 1 week.
Top 5 in Japan. That's not part of your bio.
No, but that was for like 1 or 2 days. So the second podcast is called Disability Disrupted. So I created with a friend, and it was our class project for a class we took called the Texas Partners in Policy Making. That's where we learned how to advocate for disability race public policy. Those are our little projects.
Yeah, and on Disability Disrupted, you did speak about how many disabilities in general are being targeted in the sense that there was one episode where I heard you speak about how with your friend that you did the podcast with, about how many of these individuals are just looked at people with disabilities, and then when it comes to employment or interviewing, it's almost like a no.
Yes, it's a sad reality we live in today. It's like for many individuals with disability, as soon as they go into interview, and if the interviewer can detect anything that indicate that you have a disability, bias kicks in from their side, and a lot of times the answer is no. Or they just sad because there are many neurodivergent individuals out there and throughout history who have proven themselves, and they have to change the world. So it's really sad and depressing when a person who's neurodivergent is just denied an opportunity to work.
I mean, so many of them have changed the world. They're changing the world as we speak. I think without neurodiverse individuals, our world would be far less advanced, far less creative. I just see it with my teens and tweens. I mean, they help me become creative. I don't even think I would have ever been confident enough to start this podcast without their creativity. So I really just admire all the work that you're doing to advocate for those that I'm working with myself that sometimes feel like the same way and they're scared to interview. That's the thing, is that they're very, very scared to interview. And that always comes up, whether it's an interview for high school or it's an interview for employment. We practice together, right? And I feel like something that you said is so important is this neuro-affirming way of dealing with this, which is that the interviewer needs to be held accountable for how they interview. Why is it only the speech pathologist and the individual who's neurodiverse that's practicing for the interview to accommodate what they think the interviewer is going to want?
Totally. This goes back to the other thing too, masking. Because all too often when we apply for jobs or even work in the workforce, a lot of people, they wear the mask because in order to fit in, they just got to pretend to be normal. And that's sad. A lot of us who do that, we just crash and burn. So even though I'm very open about being openly neurodivergent and not wearing the mask, the sad reality is that given the current state of the world and the country we live in today, for some people, it is not safe to unmask because, again, the bias against people with disability or against anyone who's not normal, that's enough to get people either fired, lose their jobs, or even the very least, it makes people uncomfortable and want to push you out the door, all because you're not normal. So some people, they do need to mask, which is sad.
Yeah, and all I've seen just firsthand is that when people leave that mask on continuously day after day, like you said, there's a crash and burn, the fatigue, it's debilitating. In some cases, I've seen it even lead to depression, which is why I think it's so important for you to continue to advocate for this unmasking. But a lot of my teens and tweens are fearful that when they go on interviews or they go into big social situations that they're eager for, they're scared to take off the mask. But Nathan, what would you tell these teens and tweens about taking off their mask and how they can still balance being in society and also taking off their mask? Like, do you have any pearls of wisdom that you can share with them?
That sounds hard. So I think at a high level, sometimes you just got to feel it. Sometimes if you walk in a room and you feel a more positive vibe, then it's a little bit more safer. But if you work with a person and they have a reputation or even look, or you just have a feeling that something is off, it's better to be on your guard to keep the mask on. Sometimes you can just feel it. Sometimes when people are discriminatory or biased, sometimes they just don't hide it. Sometimes they just show you who they are. Like, which is sad.
So what you're saying is that people should be guarded, whether they're neurodiverse or not, because we all wear masks on some level, right? So if I come across someone at work that may have a certain personality that is not so desirable to be around, right? Sometimes you got to fake it a little bit. So you're saying that it's okay at sometimes to put on that mask, right? If you feel uncomfortable.
Correct.
However, it sounds like you should also feel comfortable to take off that mask in safe spaces.
Correct. Because, for example, another one would be backing up. I would say at high level, you just got to feel it out. Like, for example, like the people you're with, sometimes you can just naturally gravitate towards those who you can kind of feel who you will get along with. Because like for me, I spent most of my life masking, not even knowing who I really was. Because again, you got to mask, got to pretend to be someone you're not. Just got to go to work and pretend to be this normal, efficient worker and
So
following
exhausting.
stereotype, which is horrible. But in my life, I had some very positive experiences. Like sometimes I had one boss who told me straight off, he has ADHD himself. His kids also have like awesome ADHD, and that was very, very eye-opening for me, and that really helped me to relax. Like I knew I could trust this boss. I know I can relax. I don't have to worry about being fired for being different. And the other piece to it is, I'm not sure if you ever saw TV show, Miss Marvel on Disney Plus.
Oh, yeah.
And the last episode, the main guy character, he was freaking out over telling her, how can I be normal? And her response was, there is no normal. And that's something a lot of Boston need to understand as well, because every person on this planet is different. We all look different. We all act differently. And once we accept that and get to know each of us as individuals with individual wants and needs and personalities, the world will be a better place.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, even with friends, we talk about normal, and there really is no normal. Everyone has a different version of normal. And Stephen Shore, I believe it was in 2012 when I heard him speak, and he's just a big advocate for autism because he also was someone who was diagnosed later and is an advocate for autism now. And he said that, and this to this day still sticks with me, if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. And
Right.
that is just basically a summary of everything we're discussing, which is that everybody is different. There isn't just one version of autism, you know? So the way that you're experiencing it is not the same way that someone else is going to experience it. You're not going to have the same tribe. You're not going to have the same interests. But I have a couple of just more questions for you, and,
Sure.
and then we can tie it up. But the interesting thing you said about the tribe, finding your tribe, I wanted to touch upon that briefly because a lot of the individuals that I have worked with and currently work with are fearful of that. And with every transition, they become more fearful of that, of finding a tribe. Either they're not finding the tribe because they are having a hard time making friends, or they're fearful that their next step, whether it be in high school, they're going to have to form a new tribe, and then in college, a new tribe, and then in a job, a new tribe. What are some tips? I know this is very meta, but that maybe can help individuals with autism and possibly ADHD lean into figuring out how to find the tribe?
I think a step back, the journey begins even more so internally, because having these conditions myself, one of the big struggles I had personally was self-acceptance. Because
Wow.
in the diverse community, everyone talks about changing the world, how they treat us. But the problem I face personally, which I know a lot of people also face, is self-acceptance. Because growing up, I never accepted myself. I hated myself. I hated being different. I hated being broken. I hated being a failure, being ashamed of my parents. So I did not accept myself. I really did not. So my counter to people is, how do you expect others to treat you with respect and accept you if you don't accept yourself? So that's the first battle you gotta fight is internally. You need to fight internally to accept yourself, like quirks and all.
Yeah. So once you accept yourself, once individuals are able to reach that self-acceptance, which requires support from other people, especially
Yes.
in younger years, with people neuro-affirming them and basically able to understand their perspective as much as they try to understand our perspective, and then reach that place, and then that makes it easier to find the
Yes.
tribe.
Yes, absolutely.
Just one final thing, because there's so much that we unpacked, and so many things so many nuggets that people can walk away from. But if there's one message that you have in terms of social communication and what has made it easier for you, especially because some people think that, oh no, I received this diagnosis late, or I received it in the cases that I work with. These are sometimes individuals who are starting to get support when they're 15, and that's considered late for their parents, and their parents are nervous too. If there's one message that you can tell these people about socializing and social communication and how it can get better and easier for them, what would that message be?
Whew, that's a long one. But
That's an open-ended
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just in terms of, how can some parents and some teens and tweens that right now in this moment feel like, wow, I received a diagnosis just now, when I'm 15, I'm a teenager, I want to fit in so badly. And I don't
Yes.
know how, because people are not understanding my social communication. How am I going to communicate with them in a way where they're going to accept me?
So high level, there is an adjustment process. Like one lady I had, Dr. Tiffany Jameson, she explained, like, when a parent finds out that their child has autism or ADHD or some other neurodivergent condition, parents do go through a sort of a grieving process. They grieve that the loss of the normal life which they envision. They have to accept this new reality. I think for all the younger folks as well, because it's some of the best talks I gave so far was not in front of like crowds of thousands of people or at the big conferences. The best talks were giving it to the younger generation, like those who are like high school or college level. And one thing, the biggest thing that I told them is no matter what, they will succeed. I have hope in them and they will succeed in life. It may take a long time, but they will succeed. Like, I wish somebody told me that when I was growing up.
Wow. So that really is a great place to end off on in terms of the community and anybody out there who is a parent, who is a professional, who is struggling. You will succeed. Nathan is a testament to it. And nobody told you that, Nathan, but we're telling everybody else that no, you will get there. It will take time. If you're a parent, it will take time, but you and your child will get there. Nathan, where can everybody find you? Because I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to follow you and everything that you have to offer. So what are some places where they can find you?
Yep. So I'm predominantly on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook and some of the other social media platforms. And I can share you the links later on.
Oh, that would be great if you could share the links and then I can share it with everybody else and they can follow you and see all the great advocacy work that you're doing. But wow, what a story of courage and resilience. And Nathan, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Sharon. It's a pleasure.